Hi, welcome to another edition of Antique Radio Archaeology. Today we're going to be doing a restoration on one Transcontinental ZR-4 regenerative receiver. Now the Transcontinental ZR-4 was made for the Gimbel Brothers department stores by the Chelsea Radio Company back in 1924. And what they did was they produced a boatload of these things for the Gimbel Brothers, and it's probably one of the biggest selling radios of all time for the Chelsea Radio Company. Now what I have here are 3 of 7 that I own. 4 of them are completely intact and operational. These 3 are kind of parts radios slash hanger queens that I've been dealing with for quite some time. And one day I was looking at them and I realized that I have enough parts between the 3 to actually complete one radio. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to try and put these together so that we have one good radio out of the 3. So we can't talk about the Transcontinental ZR-4 without talking about the Gimbel Brothers department stores. Now Gimbel Brothers actually had a early radio called the ZR-1, and that early radio was made by BMI Corporation, and it was a 5-tube Nutridyne radio, and it was quite expensive. Now Gimbel started selling several radios from different manufacturers, but the ZR-1 was really kind of their brand specific radio. It was their store brand. And the ZR-4 Transcontinental was an attempt by them to find something rather unique that was more in the price range of their customers. Now, the Gimbel Brothers department store is kind of a working man store. It's kind of like the Walmarts of today. So they tried to cater to that crowd, and in order to do so, they had to entice them into buying radios. And of course, the ZR-1 was quite expensive, so that probably isn't going to get very many customers, considering there were very few radio stations they could even receive. So Gimbel alleviated that by putting radio stations in their department stores. It started in April of 22 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Later on, they bought a radio station in New York, and WGBS 950 AM became their flagship store's radio station. And once they did that, they went ahead and put that ZR-4 out there. They also contracted with Chelsea Radio Company to do a ZR-2, which was actually a cabinet version of their Model 107. Now the ZR-4 is a modified version of the Model 122. And what I mean by modified is they took the original components of the 122, they put it in a cheaper, more boxy case. Later on they replaced the tube sockets and the transformers to something a little cheaper. So that became the store brand ZR-4 Transcontinental for the Gimbel's department stores. Now, what was interesting, really interesting about all this is at the same time there's another department store chain called Mays. And Mays Department Stores was actually a conglomeration of a bunch of different smaller department stores throughout the country that Mays had bought up. And one of these stores that I know of was the famous bar store, had advertised the ZR-4 Transcontinental radio. So other information I had gotten later was that there is an actual manual for the Transcontinental ZR-4 produced by Mays department store chain. So Chelsea was playing both ends of the field because Mays is actually a direct competitor of Gimbel's. And how they managed to do that, I don't know, but I do know that the Mays side of the house had one advertisement where they claimed to have $1 million worth of Transcontinental inventory. So that's pretty significant. Now, the Gimbel's department stores claims in January of 1925 to have already sold 12,000 versions of it. That's quite a number of radios for that time frame, and for Chelsea Radio Company, I'm sure the workload was just unbelievable. So that kind of launched the Chelsea Radio Company, that radio. Now, there are other radios that Gimbel's produced that were made by Chelsea outside of the ZR-2 and the ZR-4, and that would be the ZR-30, which was a Model 140, and then you had the ZR-60, which was the Chelsea Super 6, and there was also a ZR-70 or Magnet 7 tube radio, which was really their 7-tube TRF radio that they produced, and that was kind of at the end of Chelsea's reign, so that was the last radio produced probably for Gimbel's. Now there's a couple other ones that are, I don't know if Chelsea produced them, but there may be a Chelsea connection to those as well. I just don't know right now. With that being said, what we have is a radio that really put Chelsea on the map. And the ZR-4 originally was sold as a package deal that included antenna, batteries, tubes, and a speaker, along with all the little bits and pieces that came with it. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I've got here, which are 3 Transcontinental ZR-4 parts radios, and see what we can do to get one good radio out of them. Alright, so here are the 3 radios that I'm referring to. There's not a lot here. This one has basically a case with some tube sockets that are loose in here. And it has the terminals that are incorrect. It has the incorrect dials. It does have a capacitor in it. It does have some of the hardware. That is the incorrect knob. That's a brown one. It should be black. So that's that one. This one over here has a lot more stuff in it. It does have a capacitor which is not attached. It has one dial. It has the tube sockets, which that one goes here. So I do have the tube sockets and that board that they're attached to. I do have some correct terminals here. I do have the correct jacks here. That is the correct knob. I am missing that knob, and of course, yeah, the varial coupler. So there's that one. The one problem that I have with this is there's a lot of holes in here. That is an additional hole. These 2 are additional holes. So this thing's been modified. Also, there's something on the side there that somebody drilled into it, unfortunately. So that case is questionable. This one here is my most complete. It's also a nightmare. Somebody had done a bunch of lacquer on here. This is cracked real bad, you can see. So that needs some work. It does have a lot of stuff in it. It has a capacitor down here. It has it's pretty much wired with everything I need except for, okay, I do have, oh, that's broken. But it does have the right knobs. But unfortunately, what happened is somebody covered it in lacquer. Oh, I've got a bunch of hardware here. The case is covered in lacquer. It does have some of the terminals on the back. The knobs are covered in lacquer. But I do believe this right here is probably my best faceplate for what I'm trying to do here. What I may do, I don't know yet, I may use, if not one of the other cases, I may use the lid from another case, only because this one's in such bad shape, and then just try to get this one going. I do have a lot of lacquer removal, so that's going to be quite a bit of work. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tear these all apart so I can get to just parts, and then decide which components I'm going to use after I get it all disassembled. Alright, so here we are. These are all the parts. Here is the faceplate I'm going to use. This is the one that has lacquer on it, so that's going to be quite a bit of cleanup there. The case itself is also the one with the lacquer or whatever finish that is. It might even be polyurethane for all I know. I don't know. But that's got to be sanded down. This here is the lid off one of the other cases. So this is the best case. This is the best plate. And I still need to sort through the parts and figure out which parts I'm going to use. So, as you know, we have 3 face plates. This one right here that I cleaned up, and I also had this one here that had some extra holes in it, so I didn't want to use this one. It's also got some cracks and stuff on the sides here, so that one was not going to be used. But I did clean up this faceplate here, which was from the other radio, and I didn't want to use it because it had some pretty deep scratches in it, but after looking at it, it's actually in a little bit better shape than this one. So this is the one that had all the lacquer on it, and it has some discoloration here. I don't know how well you can, yeah, you can see it there. Whereas this one here is a lot shinier. So I'm going to go ahead and use this faceplate. And the other one will become a spare. So this isn't my neatest accumulation of parts, but all the parts have been cleaned up. I have everything I need here, so now it's just a matter of getting everything assembled. Now some of this stuff is going to be for the case itself, so I can set that stuff aside and just get started on building the faceplate first. Okay, so I have one slight problem here, and that is that screw is touching that plate. So I got to put some spacers there in that capacitor. So let me get those real quick. As you can see, there's a gap here where before that was touching. Now, unfortunately, with the spray, the finish turned out really, really rough. And I'm not liking this at all. So I'm going to go ahead and sand this down, and we're going to do another coat, but I think I may try a brush finish. So let's see how that works. Okay, so before we begin reassembly, one of the things I wanted to point out was, if you notice on this radio here, which is a fully intact operational radio, it does need some restoration work on it, but we'll do that at another time. But the thing I wanted to point out was right here, this little decal. This decal is a trademark registered emblem by Gimbel Brothers, and it says Philadelphia, New York, and Milwaukee, which you can't read the New York and Milwaukee. But I've never seen a really good condition decal. And if you notice on almost all the advertisements, you'll see that decal on there. But out in the wild, what you'll find is these in various stages of condition, most of them pretty bad. But you'll also see a lot of radios that don't have one at all. Now, whether this one had one or not, I have no idea. I really don't. And it doesn't matter, but what I do want to do is I want to replicate this decal. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, what I'm going to do to begin with is I'm going to use this right here, which I ordered online, and it's called Wellington Specialty Craft Supplies Water Transfer Paper, White Decal Paper for Inkjet Printers. Now what this is it's a bunch of sheets of paper that will allow me to create a decal. And we're going to go ahead and go through that process. But the first thing I need to do is get a photograph of this, and I need to work with that image. Okay, so I've taken the camera image here and I threw it into photo program. I went ahead and cropped it. I I did some adjusting on the brightness, exposure, contrast, and everything, and this is pretty much where I'm at on that image. I pretty much got rid of all the color. So I dropped that into paint, and then I just started cleaning it up. And here is what it looks like now. I've gone ahead and, as you can see, I've got the letters, I've got all these little hash marks all the way around it. I cleaned up the image in here. This was a couple days worth of work here, and I was able to find other photographs that I was able to use to figure out that it said Philadelphia, has a little dot here, New York, Milwaukee, and it has that dot there. So I've gone ahead and pretty much came up with the decal. Now the problem is I'm going to be printing this on a white background decal. I'm not doing this on clear because I have no means of printing with white ink. So therefore I'm going to be using black ink on an inkjet printer, so I need to have this white background. Therefore I have to cut this decal out to match the decal that was on the other radio. Now in order to do that, I went ahead in paint and I whited out this whole area around it. Now this resembles the decal, and as such I'm able to now print this out onto that decal paper. However, I've got to get the sizing right. I went ahead and opened up Microsoft Word, a blank document, and I set my margins to narrow, and I'm going to go ahead and take that image, throw it in here. I'm going to resize this image. Size and position, I right clicked. Get down to 2.12. What I did was, I've done this already. I've printed out this one image at that particular size, cut it out, laid it over that decal, and made sure that this is the exact fit. Now obviously I did it through trial and error until I found the right size. So this is definitely the right size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it. I want to make as many of these as possible because I don't want to waste this decal paper. Okay, there we go. Now, I make sure this is A4. A4 is the correct paper size for the decal paper. So it's set up for A4. I've got as many of those as I possibly can, so I'm going to go ahead and print that. And here's my decals. Now if you notice, it's on the shiny side of the paper, not the dull side. And I was able to get 15 of them on there. So that gives me plenty to make mistakes with. Now, they're not quite ready yet, and I'm going to show you why. Here is one of those decals. Now what I would normally do is cut this out to the exact size, get rid of all this white background before sliding it off onto here. Now these are water slide decals, which means you dip them in water, wait about 3 minutes, and then you slide it off onto the surface. So here's what will happen if I try to do that now. Uh-oh. Oh, there it went. That's not going to work. So we can't use this as is. So to prevent that from happening, I'm going to use some Krylon Clear Max crystal clear coating. And this is the glossy stuff. Picked it up at hardware store. And that will prevent that from happening. Okay, so I have the antenna hooked up, I have the speaker hooked up, I have the battery eliminator hooked up, so let's go ahead and fire this thing up and see how she sounds. Okay, well, that's not what I wanted to hear. I actually know why that's happening. It has to do with the rebuilt transformers, and let me go ahead and explain it just a second. Okay, right here is the PT431 transformer that I used in rebuilding them. If you notice, you have a red and blue wire on one side, and you have the two green ones on the other. Well, what happens is, for some reason on these Chelsea radios, and I noticed this on the other radios that I've rebuilt transformers for, sometimes you have to reverse those two leads, the two green ones. If they're one direction, everything's fine. If they're the other direction, it squeals like crazy. And you got a 50-50 chance of wiring it correctly, and unfortunately in this case it didn't work. So luckily on this particular radio it's an easy fix, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, so here is the transformer that's closest to the detector. That's the one that causes the issues. So on the primary side, if I switch these leads, that problem will go away. So basically all I'm doing is taking the transformer here and I'm turning that coil upside down, is basically what's happening. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn it back on. Ooh, that's not good. Number one, it should be much louder than that. I should have a lot of hissing and stuff. I have nothing. And I know the tubes are good. I tested them out in another radio. Okay, we have another problem. Okay, so let's go ahead and troubleshoot. Alright, so what I got here is a little function generator. It puts out a sine wave signal. I have it set up for 1 kHz. And I'm going to go ahead and inject a tone. And where I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead and put it in at, I can either put it here or here, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and put it here just so I can get it to go through the transformer. And that's going to test everything going this direction. Alright, that's actually good. So I know my entire amplifier section is good. What I don't know is what's going on with the detector. So let's go ahead and take a look at that and see what we can figure out. So what I did is I went ahead and replaced this grid leak capacitor and resistor. One of the things I noticed was the resistor on the other one was open. That still shouldn't have affected it the way it did. And I noticed that the capacitor itself was a little bit high in capacitance, which again was still within tolerance for detecting. So I just said to heck with it and replaced it with a known good one, with a known good grid leak resistor. And let's go ahead and fire it up. Okay, still nothing. So that wasn't my issue. Okay, so I think I figured this out. What it is this coil back here. This has 4 leads coming off of it. And the reason why is because it's actually 2 separate coils in one. And you can see it right here. This coil and this coil make up that one spider web. And what it is on a lot of Chelsea radios, these will be jumpered together to form one coil. On this one, they're not supposed to be jumpered. So more than likely, whenever somebody did some work on one of these parts radios, they may have used the coil out of another radio and it was already jumpered together. So I'm going to have to take it apart to find out what's going on. So that's my grid leak side. So I'm going to take this wire here, which I'm going to put a new wire on the grid leak. I'm going to run it back up through here. And we're going to join these together. Still no short. Good. Antenna. Ground grid leak. Alright. Got her fixed. This one I'm having trouble. These are all frayed really bad, and I notice they're shorting each other out and stuff like that. And I'm reading really low impedance, so that's telling me that there's probably some shorts in here. I'm going to go ahead and either replace these wires or just see if I can clean up those ends. So let me go ahead and see what I can do here. Okay, so got these wires all straightened up, got the cleaned up, and I think we should go ahead and test her out again. Alright, so everything's wired in here. I should be getting something. I'll check my voltages real quick. Alright, so I should see some form of 90 minus some, that's 48 volts. Should see about 45. Whoa! 1.45 volt. That can't be right. Where's my filament voltage? My 45 volts is being drawn way down. What the heck? Shoot. Okay, let me disconnect the... There, now nothing's, it's just going to the 1. Ooh, something's wrong with this transformer. That should not, there's no way that can be drawing that down to nothing. There's nothing hooked here. There's nothing hooked to this side. Okay. Okay, so I should see about 700 ohms here. Okay, there's about 700, well 725. Should be 3.5K. Everything's checking good. I should see nothing here. Whoa! Holy cow! I got a problem with this transformer. Holy... These two sides are shorted. How in the heck? Okay, well now I know what my problem is. Let me go ahead and replace this transformer and see what happens here. Okay, so I've replaced this transformer with another one. And as you can see, my primary, I have 900. This is the original Chelsea transformer. 6K on the output. That's what the actual Chelsea should read. Now between these two I should read open and open. That was my problem. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put everything back together and let's fire it up again. Okay, so got everything temporarily wired here. Let's go ahead and see what we can do. That sounds promising. There we go. Okay, well let me go ahead and put this thing back together. With it splayed out like this, there's definitely going to be some interference issues. So that was my problem, this transformer right here. And I had some issues with the coils. I'm glad I was able to address those because that would have caused me problems, I think, down the road. This is what it was. Now, it was causing me confusion because I was able to put a tone into it and receive it out, but that short between the primary and secondaries was the thing that I did not anticipate, and for some reason it was able to overcome that when injecting a signal into it, or at least strong enough signal into it. But obviously the detector wasn't allowing that to pass, so looks like we're going to be able to get this thing going here shortly.
Yep, the register is stacked and ready to spin, and here's the lineup. We got the Dorsey brothers, Tommy and Jimmy, on a couple of their better-known oldies. John Mercer's latest.
Fine. 9-4 Marcus or never will ask me the questions. She'll answer them. All you have to do is agree or
So what can I say other than this has been one heck of a challenge. Of course, taking 3 radios, combining them into one will have its challenges. Now, the beginning of this restoration, of course, one of the issues I had was the case. The initial lacquer coating that I put on it came out real grainy, and the reason why it did that is because it was only 60 degrees out, so I think I was spraying in too cool a weather for it, and did not like the result, so I wound up sanding it down. And then unfortunately the weather dropped into the teens, and when it did that I wound up having to go into my sunroom and heat it up and cover everything up and spray it there, and the house smelled like lacquer for a couple of days. So got past that, went on to the decal. The decal itself was something I had never done before, so I had to figure all that out. I had to of course come up with that image and manipulate that image, get it all to within specifications, get the fonts correct and everything. Then once I got that all printed out and the acrylic coating on it, was able to do the transfer. It looks great. It's way better than I ever expected. So I will be using that knowledge going forward. And then of course we ran into our problems after everything got reassembled. Now, the transformer issue initially is a legitimate issue. If you have the primary and secondary out of phase like that, it can cause that squeal. And if that happens, you just switch the leads, which I did, and that appeared to have solved that problem. But the thing is, there was another problem there that I didn't know about. And that was that the detector audio was not getting through the amplifier. And of course, by injecting a tone into it, that should have resolved that issue, because that tells you that going into the primary of the transformer, that everything from that primary all the way through to the speaker is fine. But if you think about the issue that we had, I had a resistive short. And that, what I mean by resistive short is between the primary and secondary, I was still reading about 3.5 k ohms. So it wasn't a direct short, but it was enough of a short that it caused me issues. And that short allowed that audio from the signal generator to go from the primary to the secondary. It's almost the same as taking that lead and putting it on the grid of that first amplifier tube. In the end, I wound up doing a lot of troubleshooting on the coil section because the coils were in bad shape. And they were just hanging on for dear life. And really, if you really looked at the coils closely, you would have seen that they were kind of falling apart. And I had to re-glue some of those spiderweb coils in order to keep them from falling apart because they were coming unraveled. And so in that process of readdressing the coils, I was able to get that straightened out. I was able to put new wiring into them, which I think it really needed, because that old wiring just was crappy, and it was causing me issues. And even though I would have solved that transformer issue sooner had I known what was going on, I still would have probably had long-term problems with those coils. So in the end, I straightened out the coils as well. So I was real happy with getting that done, and it looks a lot better. That was quite the adventure. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. So happy restorations, everybody. I do hope to see you again next video.